Hi, my name is Jonathan Garner, and I research Khaled Hosseini, a writer from Afghanistan who immigrated to the United States. Hosseini was born in 1965 in Kabul, Afghanistan. He lived there until 1976 when the Foreign Ministry relocated his family to Paris. His father was a diplomat and his mother was a schoolteacher at a high school in Kabul. He described Kabul as a growing, thriving, cosmopolitan city right before he left. In 1980, his family wanted to return to Kabul, but the country had undergone a communist coup and an invasion by the Soviet army. They were granted political asylum in the United States and moved to San Jose, California. He completed high school and graduated from Santa Clara University in 1988 with a degree in biology. He went on to complete medical school at the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine in 1993. While completing his residency in Los Angeles, he began writing his first novel, The Kite Runner, which was published in 2003. He has written a total of 4 novels, including his most recent, Sea Prayer, which was published in 2018. The UN Refugee Agency appointed him as a Goodwill Ambassador in 2006, and he has also established the Khaled Hosseini Foundation, a nonprofit which provides humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan. In an interview, Hosseini described his adjustment to America as, quote, difficult because of the age. He argued the adjustment was even more difficult for his parents, as they were uprooted and lost everything they had worked their lives for. Furthermore, they had to restart their lives from scratch, but they viewed themselves as extremely fortunate. Millions of Afghans who are not as fortunate as Hosseini and his family were forced into refugee camps in Pakistan, or into jobs as laborers in Iran, or forced to flee to another country. He was forced to learn English quickly in America, using newspaper, television, and radio in addition to school, to become nearly fluent within a year. The story for The Kite Runner, his most famous novel, was mostly fictional, but it was inspired by a news story about the Taliban and their impositions on the Afghan people. One rule in particular banned the sport of kite flying, which spoke to Hosseini, who said he grew up flying kites all the time with his cousins and friends. His first novel was driven by its personal stories, which have become characteristic of his novels. The story focuses on the relationship between a boy and one of his father's servants. Their relationship and its fragility is symbolized by the kites they fly together. The two boys have extremely different lives, but they learn from each other in pre-revolutionary Afghanistan. Hosseini depicts the effects of the Civil War through changes in the lives of the two boys. The son of the wealthy father is forced to immigrate to America, while the servant is left behind. The wealthy son returns to Afghanistan many years later, much like Hosseini himself, and finds a very dark version of the country he used to know. He encounters a man who, quote, is desperate to feed his children, trying to sell his artificial leg, as well as a couple who are stoned to death during halftime of a football match. Despite criticisms of the book's final act due to its literary technique, Hosseini emphasizes the difficulties of immigration and forced exile, as well as the horrific effects of civil war. His stories humanize the Afghan refugees and describe their horrific experiences as they are forced from their Civil War-stricken homes. The novel deals with themes of immigration, as well as familial relationships and how they are tested by strange circumstances including immigration, civil war, and loss. According to Hosseini, many Afghans view America as a bastion of hope, both as in terms of the United States' intervention in the country as well as an escape from war. As with all 4 of his novels, Hosseini focuses on using multiple personal stories to drive messages of the difficulties of immigration and exile. His second novel, A Thousand Splendid Suns, is written specifically about women. During his 2003 trip to Afghanistan, he heard many stories about what happened to women, the tragedies they had endured, the difficulties, the gender-based violence that they had suffered, the discrimination, being barred from active life due to the Taliban, and having their movement restricted, in addition to losing the ability to practice all legal, social, and political rights. He felt their stories were extremely important and must be told, so that others would be aware of what happened in Afghanistan. In this novel, he focuses on the relationships between mothers and daughters. While the characters themselves are criticized for being relatively simple, the novel's power comes from the circumstances in which the female characters find themselves, including unhappy families, abusive marriages, and repressive cultures. In the story, the daughter is forced to marry an older man, where she lives in fear of her safety. She is forced to wear a burqa and lives in fear of his, quote, shifting moods, his volatile temperament, and his use of, quote, punches, slaps, and kicks. Hosseini goes further to expose the horrific conditions women experience in Afghanistan and the radical shift in culture after the reign of the Taliban. The novel is able to provide a glimpse into life in Afghanistan from the perspective of multiple women to educate readers and to educate the world. In his third novel, And the Mountains Echoed, the novel plays out against the backdrop of Afghanistan's turbulent history, including conflicts with the Soviet Union, the rise of the Taliban, and the U.S. invasion in response to the September 11th attacks. The story focuses on the relationship between siblings, and specifically a brother and a sister. The family is forced to give up their young daughter to adoption in Kabul due to financial reasons. The daughter goes on to grow up in Paris with a wealthy family. As she reaches adulthood, marries, and starts her own family, she has a growing desire to return to Afghanistan. She feels a growing desire to resolve the feeling of, quote, the absence of something or someone fundamental to her own existence. Her brother, who remains in Afghanistan, eventually moves to the United States and starts a restaurant in California. Hosseini uses the story of the brother and the sister, as well as many of their family members, to develop a generalized narrative about the experience of Afghan immigrants. The novel's message is made strong due to the similarities he draws between the characters' experiences. He challenges the stigma around immigrants and the stereotype that they lack diversity. A common theme found in all of Hosseini's novels is challenging stigma and stereotypes surrounding immigration and exile. His fourth novel, Sea Prayer, was inspired by the story of a 3-year-old boy drowning in the Mediterranean Sea as his family tried to escape civil war in their home country of Syria. Hosseini was particularly drawn to the story due to having his own children, and he envisioned this piece as a monologue between a father and his son. The book, which is a graphic novel with many illustrations accompanying the text, was done to, quote, help keep alive the memory of the child and to pay tribute to thousands who have lost their lives at sea. The novel, along with its powerful illustrations, serves as a reminder of the unfathomable despair that forces people to risk everything they have. The story is about a father's attempt to describe a pre-war Syria to his son before their family begins their dangerous journey across the sea to a safer country. The book concludes with the father's prayer for safe travel across the sea. He explains to his son about the peaceful country he used to know, which stands in stark contrast to the country the son has to live in that has been ravaged by civil war. The book's ending is ambiguous, as the reader never sees the family's journey and is never told of their fate. Hosseini hoped to humanize the Syrian refugee crisis in Sea Prayer and began to eradicate the stigma around refugees who have been forced from their homes. To conclude, Hosseini has used his experience as an immigrant to shape his 4 novels and to build stories that humanize refugees and immigrants while challenging the stigma surrounding them. By focusing primarily on Afghanistan and drawing on his own experiences, Khaled is able to write stories that illustrate the struggles of immigration and exile, similar to many themes that we've experienced and researched in this class. Thank you.